Hello and welcome to Governance and Technology. Today I will be helping you answer a big question. Should you join a board? Now you may be considering a board career, or you may be considering joining a particular board. Either way, you have to answer quite a few questions first in order to answer the big question. We will power through these questions organized in 4 different groups, and if you stay with me till the end, not only I will share this list with you, I will also give you some bonus tips. Alright, let's go and answer this question. Before we start with these questions, I would like to invite you to like and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss useful resources like this in the future. As promised, I have created this list of questions that we will be now going through very quickly to answer this big question: should you be on a board? As mentioned before, we will be going through the list of questions so you can answer the big question. But before we start going through this list, I would ask you to subscribe to this channel so you do not miss future videos like this. Okay, are you ready? Let's go. First group of questions is focused on why do you even want to join a board of directors? 3 questions there. Do you have passion about the organization's goals? When you join a board, you typically believe in what this organization does. It is very important because your role and everything you do will be tightly related to your liabilities. It will also draw from your knowledge, your experience, and your mindset. So do you share a passion about this organization's goals? They can be in line with your professional education, for example, financials or accounting, or they can be a social club. Maybe you're interested in sailing, so you like public speaking in Toastmasters. Whichever it is, you should join the board only of the organization that you share certain values with. Now, every organization will have certain rules, and some things may or may not be up to your liking entirely. Once you join a board, you will be contributing to those values as they're being planned. Second question, are you joining a board for a career development? This is quite common, especially in not-for-profits or smaller social clubs. There is nothing wrong with that, but it would be important that you do not lose the sight of not just you receiving something, but you giving something to others. Once you join a board, you really need to contribute. Which brings us to the third question. Are you ready to commit? Is this just a phase? Now, commitment to board is a big commitment. It will require your time. Even if the board is meeting twice a year or once a quarter or once a month, you will be required to do certain things in between. Certain board members actually have duties which include public speaking and interactions with members and mingling around. And even if you will be spared from some of these interactions with members or shareholders, there will be certain topics that will require your time. For example, financials, budgets. You will have to review those documents. Now, you're not supposed to be a financial guru just to be able to be on a board, but you need to have a basic understanding. You need to be committed to learn it. And you need to be committed to review them to the best of your abilities, whichever those abilities are, but to the best of those abilities, because when you make a decision as a part of the board, you are becoming liable with your money, with your assets, even with your freedom. Second group will be skills. Do you understand the difference between executive and non-executive mindset? This is a very important thing to understand. I already have a video about it. Please do check it out. But you need to find out, is your role entirely non-executive? Do you have 2 hats? Do you need to sometimes be an executive and sometimes a non-executive hat? What does it mean? What does it mean to be part of a global mindset? Second question, board skills. Do you already have board skills or are you willing to learn? Now, if you already have board skills, you might not be considering these questions from the perspective of should you have a board career. Maybe you'll be targeting at a particular board. We will come to that. Do you have appropriate industry skills or experiences that can benefit this organization? Don't forget, joining the board is not just about you. It's not about taking, it's about giving. You need to have that mindset in you. Of course, there will be certain benefits for you. It will look beautifully on your resume. It might benefit your career path and all that. But you will not be a good board member if you are not striving to benefit this organization, to bring something in this organization. You may feel that you may not have so much to contribute, but sometimes the healthy view, the perspective, is what is needed. So it can be just fine. But you will need some skills, and you should be willing to learn those. A third small and last small category is understanding risks. There are risks to your reputation. If this board is not working well, if something goes really wrong, if there is a lawsuit or something happens, there will be reputation in question, not just for the organization, but for you who was on the board. You might find yourself in a courtroom. You may lose some assets. So before you join a board, you need to consider what kind of impact to your reputation you will have. How likely is this organization to do something wrong? Have they done wrong in past? It is actually quite interesting to see some organizations advertising aggressively for board members on and on and on. What is happening there? Why are board members leaving? Is there a bad toxic culture there? Are they being removed? Do you really need that? You also need to understand the risks to your income, assets, and even freedom. If you're joining a board which is more likely to have certain legal complications, and especially if you go into certain industries where this is very common, you will have to consider first how will you protect yourself, your family, your assets. Will you put everything behind trusts? Do you have methods to protect yourself? You should talk to your accountant, you should talk to your lawyer and see what kind of measures can you do in order to protect yourself. However, do not forget, even if you have a voluntary position in a little club, you are legally liable and you can end up paying for things. There are many things in law which protect you. However, if you do enough wrong things as a group, you can become liable. All right, now the last big group of questions, and this is the important group of questions which will be interesting first to those who are first time considering board role, but it will also be interesting to those who are considering their next board role. Which questions do you need to ask? So let's just go quickly through them. Ask for some information to be disclosed which is common under NDA or research on your own. You have right to ask, and it is a very, very common thing to request certain documentation to be shared with you. You will typically need to sign an NDA agreement, which is perfectly fine, and then you will get some information about this organization. You should consider not joining the board role where this will not be given to you. At least that is my advice. Read the organization's constitution document. Skip no lines. This is very important. Constitution is a document of any organization which has all of the details how organization works. There can be further documents coming out of constitution document, but your constitution document is a founding document and the core document. If you can request further documents, by all means take them and review them. But constitution is something you should definitely review. Now, even if the constitution document is not readily available to you, in many countries you can approach a government body, a financial regulator or tax regulator or something like that, and request a copy of these documents. In Australia, we have ASIC for that. You may need to pay a small fee, but a small fee is nothing for protecting yourself in the future. Review financials, including last few tax lodgements. Are they on time? And is everything adding up? This is very, very important. Some organizations, especially not-for-profits, but also some more dodgy, famous organizations, they're not always quite tidy around tax. If the organization continues to fail to submit a tax, that can have severe consequences to the organization. And you, as a board member, are the one who needs to be pushing this to be sorted. There are significant liabilities which can come to you. There's significant charges that you can receive, and they can impact your life 10 or more years after if you need to disclose that you've been in a situation which is not good for you. So make sure financials are in order and they are periodic. Almost every organization, and I should say every organization, but almost every organization with a more formal board will have an auditor. Some smaller ones will not. But you should have a look, and if audits are being made in an organization that you are considering joining, do request at least the last audit. It will tell you a little bit more if there are any ongoing issues or if auditor has some serious concerns. Understand sources of income. Whatever organization you are considering joining, they are being funded. Products, services, membership, whatever they're getting the income from. You should have a good idea how is it coming. It may benefit you later on. Current and future challenges. This is something that you will probably source while talking to someone who is representing board during the recruitment process. That typically is chair, could be another board member or so. You should get the idea what kind of challenges they're solving right now, or if they're seeing some upcoming issues. This is more informational one, but it can give you some good idea on what is happening. Is overall governance documentation in order and easily available? Some boards have a very transparent way of working. Some boards have a person which has all of the files, and then you need to ask and beg, and especially if you're new to the board, you might not even know which files you should demand. So in order for you to be able to efficiently and properly do your job, you should know that you have access to these documents, or at least there is some migration coming up which should assist you with that. Very, very important thing. Director's insurance. Will you be reasonably protected, and for how long after you step down? This will differ between country to country, so I cannot give you a general advice. But for example, in Australia, certain liabilities go up to 6+1, so 7 years after you step down from your position. If something goes wrong, there is so-called director's insurance, which is an optional insurance which every board should really take. These contracts have quite a few gotchas, and if you're considering about having one, just yes or no, once you get on board, you will probably want to review it. You should also get a really proper advice whether certain provisions in this contract are good or maybe should be changed in the future. One such very dangerous provision is that insurance companies sometimes say that they will pay for your defense if they can choose how you plead. Insurance company can simply calculate that it is cheaper to defend you as guilty even if you're innocent, and then pay the other side rather than going through the expensive process of defending you and possibly losing at a higher amount. You do not want to have such clause in your contract, because that means you might find yourself in a position that you will have to admit something that you're not guilty of. Or if you maintain your innocence, then you will be paying the full amount, and these amounts are not small. There are many other tricks which happen in these contracts, so you really need to be on top of that. You don't need to know all about this at the first day, but I do advise you, once you have this contract, have a look with a legal professional, lawyer, or some other legal advisor, and get the good information at how you stand. Another thing which seems simple but it still matters, is this position paid or not? There is nothing wrong if you volunteer, and there is nothing wrong if you're paid. Now, if it's not paid and you're volunteering, you still might be entitled to reimbursements. Either way, you do need to understand what kind of implications it has on you, on your tax, and on your tax reporting. You review activity on their social media. Social media today covers a lot of things, and comments and statements can quite often tell you about what kind of environment is it. Is it toxic? Are there problems? And are there future liabilities? It costs nothing, just a little bit of your time, and you should definitely do it. Review the information about other board members, especially chair. These people are people that you will be working with, and when you vote on a decision, doesn't matter if you agree or disagree, once there is a decision which has been made, you all have to defend this decision. I discussed this in my other video. If you want to learn a little bit more, there will be a link underneath. But you have to understand that these people will be very close to you at the end. Maybe not personally, but they will be affecting your life almost like your life partner is. So it is very important to know who these people are. Especially chair, because for a period of time until chair gets changed, your relationship with chair will impact your overall satisfaction and representation of your ideas. Now, every board member has equal right to speak, but you also need to ensure that there is a proper culture in there so that actually happens. How did your seat become vacant? Now, this is very important. Was the person removed? Did person retire? Did person leave in a disgruntled way? And did maybe 5 of them leave this year? What is it behind it? You should have this kind of conversation and just try to understand why you're replacing someone else at this role. Typically, when there is financial year end and a few months before that, there will be calls for various board roles or nominations. That's perfectly fine. And it might not give you enough insight in what's happening. But if mid-term a board member is suddenly gone, for whatever reason, you don't want to know why, because you will be filling that spot. Now, this is an interesting one. Do you have a conflict of interest? Not every conflict of interest is a deal breaker, but it has to be disclosed. Board has to review this conflict of interest of yours, and they need to be okay with it. If they agree that this is acceptable, then you may join the board should you be selected. You may need to abstain on certain votes which are related to your conflict of interest, but you may still join with the conflict of interest. There are conflicts of interest that you will not want to go over. They will not want to go over, and that is just fine. Will you pass all relevant police checks and any other requirements board demands? It is very common that for board roles you will have to have police checks. Now, boards will have certain standards. Not all boards require completely clean police checks. You might have had a situation which has nothing to do with your role or performance in a role. However, there will be boards which will be requiring that these police checks are completely clear. If you're dealing with kids or vulnerable people, you might need to have additional clearance on a card like we have in our country working with vulnerable people. You might have some other requirements they will ask you to meet. Do you meet them? Moving on. How often board meets and are there any other assumed duties? That means travel, public speeches, social events. These things can consume a lot of your time. Now, in certain organizations, there is a real need for that because in order for you to have a better understanding how organization works, and especially if you're coming as a non-executive independent director, which means you are not that familiar with the organization, that can actually benefit you. But it will certainly take your time. If the board is meeting once a year, once a quarter, once a month, or even once a week, it really depends how many of these other activities there are. You should also be aware that on top of all of that, you will have work. You will have to prepare for meetings. You will have to investigate topics. You will be Google searching things. You will be talking with professionals. You will be approaching other people. You will be talking one-on-one with other board members or with chair. So there will be a lot more work than those few meetings. How do you get appointed? How can you be removed? When was the last time when someone was removed? Understanding the process of nomination, removal, and some history of it will tell you a lot about this role. It will also tell you how to behave and how to solve certain problems. In a board where it's not very easy to remove the person who is not performing or even worse, damaging organization, you will have a lot of struggles in dealing with other people. It may impact you as well. It may cause liabilities if there is damage. A few questions have been leading to this, but it is finally time to ask the real question. What is the board culture? Is it toxic? Is it hard to work in? What are relationships? How long will your appointment last? How many terms can you serve? Some boards have various restrictions. For example, you can only go for 1 term or only for 2 terms. Sometimes there is a benefit of long-serving board members. Sometimes there is actual damage of people who simply do not go away and they bring certain mood. So there is no perfect formula. Should everyone be forever if they want to, or shareholders or members, or should there be a cut when they have to stop serving, no matter if everyone wants them or not? But that can impact your decisions and your planning and your time management. There might be some other questions that you want to ask. All right, now that you came to the end, let's quickly go through some bonus tips. Join a professional association for board members. Highly advise that. You will hear what are the problems, you will learn some knowledge, you will network, you might even find better opportunities. Get some education. This kind of association usually have some education, but by all means, there is this YouTube channel. There are some other YouTube channels. Do your research, learn. Also, learn about specifics of your local laws. Sometimes you'll be watching a video and you'll be getting advice which is valid in some country, but it might not be valid in some other countries. You may have noticed that sometimes I mention on certain of my comments that this may or may not be like that in your country. So when you get on a board, or before you get on a board, you should have the idea what applies to you. Customize your resume. Your resume for your normal job will not be good for your board role. People who are joining board, they demonstrate what's commonly called a helicopter view, a very high view about issues underneath and around. Do have that kind of helicopter view and try to show that. If you previously served on a board, this is obviously something you will use. If you are first time joining a board, you might use certain other activities to demonstrate your capability to do that. It is always a little bit more challenging joining your first board, but you may consider joining a club or a small not-for-profit so you can build this resume there. And lastly, you can attend a board meeting as a visitor, observer. If you are a member of any organization which has board meetings, you are likely to have right to attend part of the meeting. Now, there are some parts of the meeting called in camera where you cannot listen. You will be asked to leave and maybe come back. But for the majority of meetings in most of the organizations, members or shareholders are invited. If the organization is very, very big, you might be able to connect remotely or at least attend AGM. AGM will happen once a year, so it's a good source of information. But even if your organization doesn't have it, just find another one and see if you can join membership or something, and then listen to the board and how they talk, what kind of dynamics is there, and similar. Thank you for staying till the end of this video. So, do you want to pursue a board career? Do you think this is good for you? Did you decide if you want to join some particular board? I have posted a link so you can review those questions. You might have some other questions. By all means, ask. Just ask. You need to be sure. I'm very curious to know, are you considering a board career or are you considering a particular board? Did this list of questions help you? I really hope they have. Do put some comments underneath and thank you for watching. Good luck.